Okay, I think we're live now.
Cool.
That was a little frustrating, but
Happens.
yeah. So, hello everybody. I'm so happy if you're here watching, and I'm here with Matisse Williams. My name is Sarah Fancy. This is the Sarah Fancy Constellation channel. Absolutely dedicated to constellation work, whether it's tabletop constellations, horse constellations, family constellations. I mean, I could go on, but it's all constellation work or therapy. And yeah, I did a whole series of lives where I did live, essentially tabletop constellations every Thursday morning. I took a break and now I'm back with Matisse to talk about horse constellations. So that being said, so I'm going to have Matisse introduce herself. But before you do that, I just want to ask everyone, please subscribe, please share if you like the video, and do a like if you like it. Thank you. So do you want to say, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I am a graduate or a mentee of Sarah. We started working together 5 years ago, and I share the horse constellation work and what I call equine guided ceremony here in Ojai, California, with my herd of 5 horses that are masters in this work, in this process. And I love it. I love it so much. And I'm really grateful to connect with you, Sarah, and share more about it, because it's not the easiest to talk about. It's phenomenological and it's being and it's embodied. And so it's great to be able to riff together and explore some of the questions that come up for people who are curious.
Yeah. Do you have a name for your ranch, your business?
No, not currently. No, I'm at a shared location that has other practitioners that also work with horses in a what I would call energetic and emotional capacity. And we're together coming up with a container, but for now it's a private location that we're kind of creating a village for healing with horses.
Oh, great. But as
Yeah.
far as your business, do you have a name?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I called my business and the ranch that I was at previously Two Moons Ranch.
Are you still that?
Yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, there's that level where the philosophical foundation and the brand kind of meet. And Two Moons for me, like came on really early as a name, because all of the healing work for me is about making the unconscious conscious and moving material from the unseen to the seen. And so that to me was represented by the symbol of the new moon to the full moon. So hence Two Moons.
All right.
So there are two moons herd wherever they go, wherever we go.
Right. And so you were on the East Coast. Do you just want to say, briefly, like how you came into this whole thing and how it got you to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I had met you, Sarah, in 2010. And at the time I was a university student in Los Angeles, and I was not really on the path or in my own healing journey yet, but a close family member had a prolonged hospitalization due to mental illness. And that was the first turning point that sort of catalyzed a change and created a deep need for healing and exploration. And someone had recommended me to meet you because they knew I had a background in horses, that I loved horses, but specifically because there was an event in my family that was deeply affecting all of us. And I wanted to find support in a modality that would look at that lens. So we had one incredible encounter And then I sort of changed my whole life, like left business school, started working, I mean, for just my own process in different capacities with like yoga for the first time and astrology and just like kind of really hungry seeking until later going to graduate school in transpersonal psychology. And then around the time I finished graduate school, this was like fall of 2017, I was ready to start working with people in a new way. I didn't know what that would look like. And that new path coincided with yet another life crisis or difficult moment where I, through my inner work and process, realized that it was time to leave my marriage. And I had these dreams of like horse ancestors coming through my window every night. So it was like this point where there was a big choice to make. I didn't have a lot of bravery to say and do what I needed to do, but I also couldn't betray or abandon what I knew was true for me. And then all the support started coming in, like in the dream world and kind of this mythological layer of horses. And then the field delivered a random email from you who I had not heard from in like 7 years, that you were doing mentorships. And so I reached out to Sarah and kind of immediately shifted my life and adopted the first 3 horses and began deep study and inquiry. It's like, this is the thing. I want to teach and share what I feel is the most powerful and the most creates the most lasting change. And this was it. So I wanted to be a part of bringing that out to more people and serving that experience to more people.
And the 3 horses were Gigi, Obi, and Nugget. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. That was kind of a surprise because, and I say this too for people that like maybe don't have the level of experience that they think they need to begin this path, is I had never worked with rescue horses. I had never done all the care for my own horses. I had ridden here and there. I had like a pony when I was younger and I was at a barn and I knew some things, but I had never had this kind of intimate and we'll say sometimes dangerous like relationship with horses. And Sarah had guided me to keep going to different rescues, auction, just finding the horse that has the capacity to work in this way or the potential, and also who is my mirror to help me grow and learn. And that was Gigi, my mare, who's a retired thoroughbred. And then I went to get a companion for her at the same rescue, an older Arabian pony who's super mellow, gentle, loving, and he was bonded to this little Hackney pony. So on the day they arrived, the rescue owner said, "Will you please take this pony, just foster him for 6 months or a year?" And so that's how I ended up with 3 in that initial start.
Nugget turned out to be like a gold mine, right?
Yeah, he ended up being the star, so to speak. He's very small. He's all black with a little white spot and white socks. And he's archetypally showed up as the inner child horse. And he was actually the most difficult because he had experience from his previous life in owners where he didn't want to be around men. He would get really aggressive around men. And he didn't want his face or his head touched. So putting the halter on him in a way that was creating a positive experience and loving and full of consent took a lot of time. And one of the things that Sarah had guided me towards was using the skills, the gifts, the the things that I had already studied and learned and had been practicing with people, using them with the horses. And so for Nugget, that was sound therapy, and taking the Shruti box every day, sitting in the pasture with him, with a lot of space. And
Hold on. Can you
mhm.
say what the Shruti box is? I think
Oh
some people.
yeah. The Shruti box is a drone. It's a bellow instrument that you pump to create sound, and it has this steady harmonic that you play through it. And it's used often for singing, which is how I used it. I would hum and tone, and not really sing songs, but more so sound. Little by little, he became so curious. He would touch his nose to it. I could feel the opening to touch his face. And that's how we built our relationship. It was more like learning to trust each other versus like, you got to get this done and that horse needs to be haltered kind of mindset that you would find in a more traditional setting. And I don't know to what capacity he was responding to the sound itself. But what I realized, and I've learned since, is that the humming and the toning on my behalf was relaxing my nervous system. It was tuning the polyvagal system. And so my biorhythms slowed down so much. I'd move into a space of thoughtlessness. Like, that's the meditative space. So I'm not like thinking a bunch of cluttery thoughts. I'm not out to lunch thinking about my laundry or what I have to do next. And I'm also not pushing or penetrating my desire on him, just opening, softening and opening. And I think that created the entry for us to actually start a relationship together.
Yeah, that's yeah, like you said, it's kind of like the opposite of what people tend to do, is to force their way on horses, and like also have an agenda, like you've got to do this. And I've found especially with rescues, they have to decompress, they need time to recalibrate, they need time to feel safe, and consistency on our part, and no demands on them.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was wonderful what you did. And you also did that with your other horse, right? That you kind of ended up by default ended up with him. And can you say a little bit about that? Because I remember you sent me the video of you singing, and he literally almost fell asleep. Like he almost fell to the ground because he was so kind of hypnotized, and it's really not easy for a horse to fall like that. I mean, they have to be drugged to literally fall, because they don't fall when they're sleeping on their feet usually, right? They do that all the time. But anyway, do you want to say a little bit about that? But yeah, and then mention Goliath as well, because he was
cool.
Yeah.
I do want to say one more thing about Nugget, because it's all like, that was the first few months, which is this precious, precious time. And just that right after that was happening with me and him, and I could feel the intimacy, and I trusted him and I trusted myself. And I was really opening, not just in my healing, but creatively, to try new things. The vet came to do a vet check and was like, this horse is dangerous. You need to return this horse. You don't know what you're doing. This horse will never be a therapy horse. And it was sort of this perfect, like, here I am on my path. It's growing, it's going, there's flow. And then boom, you're hitting those threshold guardians, or those moments of choice and challenge where I could have said, you're right, take him back, I'm over it. Like that, I could have abdicated my authority and my power to someone else to tell me what to do. And instead, just like sticking with it, that was a huge practice and a muscle that I had to keep building, that really came from those first few months and that time with Nugget. And so that was spring of 2018, like winter, spring 2018. And then when COVID was happening initially in New York, it was not a safe or legal time to have in-person group experiences. So I opened to have a boarder, and he really needed exactly what the environment that we were providing. He was a hunter jumper horse, so much performance pressure, and a body that really couldn't do the task that was asked of him. And he is now part of the herd. He ended up getting like he stuck. It was just, and I say that because he wasn't a rescue in a conventional way. He wasn't in the slaughter pipeline at auction or at a feedlot, but he was in a situation that wasn't supporting his gifts, and his gift.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, his gift is he's a deep meditator. He goes into the most deep trance. The first few times I put him in the round pen, he just wanted to lay down and his body needed to release. He would shake, he would release, and he needed rest. However, at the same time, he was the biggest challenge for me because he's 18 hands, which is large. And he was angry. He hated people. He was pissed off. Everything that was sort of a basic task felt like a really big ordeal. And he was also not socialized with other horses because of his value. He would be in a stall and turned out, and the risk of being around other horses to his either aesthetic or his health was too high in that world. That's very normal. And so to start to socialize him with the other horses was a really big deal. And to start opening up this kind of alternative way of relating to humans was a really big deal. Because while some of the horses were freeze or flight, he was fight. And this was a day, it was like after a big storm, the sun was out, they were all kind of laying down and hanging. And I just started playing for the ponies in a big open space. And he was in with the ponies, and he just dropped. And it's the first time I felt like I was really, he was letting me in, like in terms of like the way our heart field can penetrate another's field. He was letting me in without pushing me away or moving away. And he was also letting me see him vulnerable and see him open and go like, oh my God, this is a master here. And we renamed him Sensei in that moment. We renamed him because I went, oh, wow, this is a different energetic signature of the other horses. And this is one that has a lot to share and a lot to teach.
Yeah, because I remember we were doing constellations around him and your relationship, and we were going to the roles blind and we didn't know who we were. And I think I was him. And one thing I noticed when I'm in the role of a horse is I become really audio sensitive. Mm-hmm. And you're also audio sensitive, right? Like you sound healing and everything, which you're really good at. And you understand that language, right? So this is outside of our general language, like, come over here, do this, you know. It's a different way of relating, and it puts you in a different frequency as well, like you said. Like, it's bypasses the mental in a way, right? Mm-hmm. And then that you were able to communicate and meet him in that space. I mean, it's just amazing. And he is a very intimidating horse. And I remember there was a couple of things that happened for you where it was starting to get, well, is this safe for me? You know, is this safe? Am I going to get hurt? Because people do get hurt, like with traumatized horses, right? So what I was going to say earlier when I interrupted you was that his trajectory was going downhill. I mean, he was being passed around, right? He had been passed to one trainer, to the next trainer, from what you told me. Yeah. And each trainer trying to prove themselves with him. Right. And not meeting him in the way that he needed to be met. Yeah. And that's how you damage horses, in my opinion.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Psychologically and physically. And the thing that is severely misunderstood, which I get chills because I think this is sort of the point in general, is the power of the subtle. They think, oh, he's big, he's reacting big, he has a very strong head, and he was really pushing with the head. He actually jumped over a pasture fence, which is really, really high, and just bolted through the woods. And there were all these reactions that I hadn't seen. And the other 4 horses where I kept questioning, like, is this crossing my boundary of safety? Is this too much for me? Because I can't be a martyr to the process. I need to keep the other horses safe, myself safe, the people safe. But he also like helped me rise to this greater level of understanding that we could do this together, that I didn't need to give up, and that it doesn't take a lot. It was less is more with him. Slowing down and breathing and being versus adding pressure or momentum to a situation. He was a great example of the power of the subtle and the strength of gentleness, which like now he's in the constellation work, and he's the only one that will lay down next to people. And like I had to forgive him. Like we went through, it's funny how the bonds, we'll talk about Goliath in a minute, but Goliath was just like, I love you. We love each other. Let's do it. Ease and flow, ease and flow. And then with Sensei, it was like, we earned our relationship. We had to trust each other. We had to forgive each other. And that theme in medicine of forgiveness was really present in our relationship, which he now brings into the constellation work, which is so cool to see.
Yeah. And then he's also been able to socialize with other horses, which also took a while, right? And that was bonding as well.
Yeah. So
how long did it take? Like,
how long did it take? Wow. Well, he came in March 2020 and we moved to California in March 21. So we had a lot of time and space where I really let him be and just show up. And because the business wasn't running, there was a lot, like the space was made to be with him and to put in small efforts every day. It's like, we want a big reaction or a big result, but really it was like 1% a day and then going backwards and then 1% a day. And when we were going to move, I really questioned like, what's the best for his health and for the herd? This is a big deal. And when we moved, he had symptoms of EPM. So when we got to California, the first 3 months was just like me and him healing his body every day. And that is what that really bonded us, like with such a love and respect of him, of like, I'm here for him no matter what. And I'm going to put in all I can to help his healing process. And then there was this turnaround when we ended up at the ranch that we're at now. The horses were all in a pasture together, and something like his illness made me keep looking for the right spot. And when we found it, it was almost like he guided us there. He was like, I need something different. And I had to pay attention to that because he was just deteriorating.
He wasn't doing well in the other places. I think you had 2 other places before the one that you're at now, right?
Yeah. And that was a lot of really big decisions of like, what's best for their physical and mental health, what's best for the people who are going to come and work with us, what's best for me. And then, in a way, his illness was a catalyst to really hold true to the vision of what we need, which is safety and privacy and freedom. Yeah. And then when we, like, I wouldn't let go, I wouldn't settle. And then when we found it, his like healing process just went so fast. And then it was only after that. So almost 2 years into having him, his first constellation was January 2022. So almost 2 years after meeting him, until he's like in there doing the work and we all trust each other and it's safe, and not just safe, but he's a huge bonus to the process.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm so glad you didn't quit, you know, and massive kudos to you for like hanging in there. And, you know, I remember there was one time and I had to say to you, you know, you're like, your safety is primary. You know, like, and like you said, are you going to be a martyr to the process, you know, but there's always, you found a way. I mean, that was it. And also, you know, there's all these outside influence and some people may have told you you're crazy, or some people tell you you have to do this with him and that with him, you know, but really he was able to tell you what he needed, right? And
Yeah.
environment is huge. Environment. And he's a super, super sensitive horse. I mean, I've never met him, but you know, I represented him, I think, a couple of times. So I kind of have an insight into him, and he was really special horse. That's what I felt. And one of the kind of horse that's misunderstood, you know, and that was like Silver for me. You know, Silver was pulled from a feedlot, and nobody, he was a stallion. He couldn't do his job anymore. He was considered useless, you know, and he was pulled. He was the last one to come out, and he was just incredible horse, you know. But it takes time to develop the relationship, right? To start trusting the horse instead of everyone else's opinions, and especially when you're kind of new and you don't have a lot of experience, and you've been taught a certain way as well, right? And then, you know, and I'm really proud of you that you stood up to the people, because I know where you were on the East Coast of New York, you know, the tendency was to be very traditional in the horse ways, right? And I think one time someone sneered and said, oh, she's singing to the horses or something, or rolled their eyes, you know, right? And that you could actually stay true to what you really felt on a heart level, right? And that is a huge testimony to you and your horses and your work, because this all kind of comes together, and now it's come together as a herd. Like, you have your herd now. Incredible.
And it's like, by setting on a path to do something that would be really challenging, but it's all rooted in service. It's like healing our relationships to horses, to ourselves, to our families, to the earth. Like, I had this like kind of warrior priestess drive to like do it no matter what. And what I didn't foresee is how much my becoming would be like a fruit of this tree that we're planting together. And the example with the singing was, one of my ponies is really afraid of needles, and they were needing to do sedation for the dentist or something. It was like something where I don't actually remember, but I remember humming, and then the vet being like, this isn't the time for kumbaya, bring him over here. And I was like, where am I going to find a good team? Like, this is hard. And I think in a way it was, I felt kind of like, you know, in baseball, they practice with two bats when they're about to go up to bat, and then they like throw one, and then the one bat feels lighter. They like add extra weight on purpose, so when they hold the one, it's lighter. And I kind of felt like some of the interactions I had when we were on the East Coast were like that. I was like, oh wow, I have created a situation where I'm getting as much judgment and criticism as possible, so that I'm not afraid of the judgment and criticism. Because that part of me, and I was in my Saturn return, I was 29 when we first started this. The part of me that wanted to be a good girl and be pleasing and have approval and do it the right way kind of kept getting tested and challenged. And the other part of me that was like deeply feminine and deeply trusting of the unknown and of the body and of the intuition, like, she had to practice like coming out and expressing herself. And a lot of those challenges from the outside helped me with that dance of like working with what I would call the wounded maiden, who's like, please like me. I want to do a good job. Tell me what's right. I'm going to just give you all my authority and my power because I don't have any to like, no, I know we're not doing that. And we are doing this. And this is what's allowed in my space. And this is what is not. And not just mine, but the horses. Like, who you have around your horses is a big deal. Absolutely. Everybody, the whole team, wherever you are, and who comes, like advocating for their space as in addition to mine, like that was a big part of this kind of inner transformation that then had effects on the outside.
Yeah, it's like the herd expands out to humans and all, like you said, everyone involved. They all become part of this herd. And if there's sort of like if there's conflicts, you know, then that can interrupt the horse herd in a way that, you know, things can not go so well.
Yeah.
You know, or be
There's
not
a
so
level.
harmonious. Yeah.
Totally. Like they don't know, okay, now we're going to do our work and now we're not. They're always mirroring. They're always alchemizing and moving energy. They're always tuning to each other. And so I remember when my mare, like seemingly out of the blue, was very angry, like, don't touch me, don't come near me, would bite. She never bit anybody, but she would bite at, and her ears would go back. And it's like, what is going on?
Right.
Yeah. And she was playing out somebody else's repressed anger that was there every day. And she was really telling me, like, this, we got to process this. And that was hard because everyone who was in their force field and their daily life had a level of integrity with managing their emotions, strengthening their nervous system, having a pretty like high frequency health, because the human herd and the horse herd were also kind of this interspecies herd.
Yeah, absolutely. One herd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I love how you said that. It's like they don't just sort of turn it on for like sessions. Like they're doing it all the time. It's just whether or not you're noticing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same goes for training. People think, oh, we're training because we're in the round pen, or right now I'm asking you to move your feet a certain way. And it's like every interaction is training. Every interaction is a constellation. Like, are you paying attention to that subtlety again, and like what you're giving to the moment? Because they're constantly reflecting back.
Yeah, I kind of follow the path of least resistance, you know, and it's like I just want everything to be easy, and because it can be extremely dangerous. I mean, you know, it's we're dealing with very large animals that weigh thousands of pounds, and you know, they get scared very easily. You know, I always equate them to birds. Like, think of a bird and how easily it is to scare a bird. The same with a horse. You know, you suddenly go like that, or you take your jacket off. Like, you know, and it's also the best way I feel is be horse. Forget being human. Be horse. Meet them there, and then see what happens. Probably going to have much better results.
Yeah.
But can you just say something about Goliath? Because Goliath's the white Percheron, right?
Yeah, I sold my wedding dress to buy a Goliath off of an auction. He is 2,000 pounds of pure love. And he's, when you look at him, has a very fairy tale, like the giant all white horse with a huge mane, and he's big and he's proud. But he actually has like a neurological condition that is, I think, both his, like, it's like his physical impairment is his metaphysical gift. And Goliath is an actual energy worker. And it's taken me a while to see him, how he works, like, and he's just like the love of my life. And he visits people in their dreams. Like, people will see a picture on Instagram and say like, okay, this big white horse came to me and told me to reach out to you. I mean, he's working on so many levels, which I relate to because I have a vision impairment. I'm blind in my left eye. My work is about seeing the unseen. Some of the sensitivity I have with the horses and with sound comes from a physical impairment that has like in the 3D muggle world, like something is broken. And yet there's kind of this archetypal thing of like the blind seer, or like seeing into the unknown. And I feel that there's a resonance between me and Goliath, because we both have something like that in our lives. And Goliath is just like an inner knowing. We don't communicate like through words in a kind of, it's a sort of our own feeling, thinking language. The closest thing I could try to relate it to is almost like how dolphins have echolocation. They kind of beam back these like think feel states. But Goliath will blow into people's chakras. He will have these really intimate moments with people in the work, usually at the end. He'll kind of stay away until in the constellation, there's a big moment of truth. There's an opening. The flow of love is there. Somebody's system rewires because their story has changed or been dissolved. And whatever happens in that moment of openness and liberation, then he comes, and this isn't every time, but he'll come and he'll nudge or breathe into people's backs, into their hearts. And there have been a few times where people have just been forehead to forehead with him. And at the end of the constellation, I'll ask, like, what did that feel like to you? What did you see and sense and notice? And they're just like, that's between me and Goliath. I need to keep that, we know, and he knows. And that's what is true. And I just go, cool, thank you. This incredible horse. He's also a great example of the right set and setting for something. It's like children too. They all have different learning styles, gifts, and expression that comes out in different environments. And Goliath, when he first came, would park out and shake. He has something called shivers, and they're like, this is degenerative neuromuscular disease. You only have a few years left with him. His body's going to deteriorate. And it's going to break your heart. And it's like, oh man, this is what I signed up for. Like, we might not be here for a long time, but we have work to do, and I'll love you through it. But what we found was living outside, having friends, good groceries, having this sort of energetic, emotional world of humans. It's not progressed at all. If anything, like his fear and his pain have gone down significantly. And the better he feels in his body, the more he shares in his work with me and with the rest of the herd.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so happy to hear that, because these sort of death wish, sentences, like, ugh, horrible.
Yeah.
And I used to go like, sorry, no, don't want to hear, like, it's really like between me and the horse, and what does the horse need? Does the horse want to be here?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a different way of healing, and it's a different approach, and which isn't, I don't know, it's just a different way.
Yeah.
But like for me out here, it's very difficult for me to get a vet out here. I have to, it's only if there's other people wanting a vet at the same time that they'll come out, and if it's an emergency, you pay double or whatever. And that's if they will come out. And sometimes they just say not in the area.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of the stuff myself. And yeah, so during the years, I've just found ways and tools that I use and skills. And otherwise, as well, I'd probably be out of business. I mean, the cost of the vet fees, is just astronomical. I mean, I'm not slagging off vets at all. Like, vets are great, they help animals and things like that, but it is very costly, and they also give a lot of drugs and things like that. And like I think I mentioned to you that one of my horses is having problems with her leg, and I'll just let her out, and let her find what she needs, you know, because there is some
Mhm.
grass and things growing around here because we had a lot of rain.
Great.
But just also giving the horse some freedom to make choices, like more choices than they would if they're in a stall all day.
Yeah.
Or, you know, or do I look that way or do I look that way? You know, it's like let them wander around. I mean, they're not going to go that far. Like for me, I can do that. I understand with
Mhm.
some people that have neighbors that don't want horses on their land, or, you know, or they've got a garden and stuff like that. But I'm fortunate enough that neighbors don't complain at all. I think they like it that the horse is grazing and, you know, clearing the brush and stuff.
Yeah.
And but that was also a sequence for me to find the place, that is going to work for the horses, to find a place that's going to work for me, for the
Yeah.
work, you know. And it's a process.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm so glad that you have found a place where your horses are happy, they like it,
Yeah.
and the atmosphere at your place sounds really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
plan on getting your own place eventually? Like, do you see yourself doing that?
I am open, but I'm in a moment of integration. We've been at this ranch for 1 year, and it feels like the perfect, I always question like right size, like both in how I'm showing up and expressing and how the business is and the place. And for where we are now, the benefit is like I can just focus so much on showing up for people. Because when I had my own place in the past, property development, seeding the grass, uh, ordering hay, staffing, training the horses, working with people, it was many, many hats. And this is the first time in this 5-year process where things are simplified and in place so that I can like really be present for the people that want to come and either learn how to do this or have their own work. And I think that's a sweet spot that will go and grow for a while. But I'm so inspired by your place, and I have been since the beginning of like being in a really vast landscape that is wild and is like an example of living in alignment with your values as far as like energy use and water. And that is truly an inspiration and something that I hold in my heart as like a model that I think is really important to have available for people to dip into or to replicate. It's like living off the land, being really aware of consumption, having just that psychological setting where you look for miles and miles and miles and there's nothing else. And that the horses, I think it's almost like I feel personally more creative being outside of a city because there's so much mental energy and chaos and there's so many dimensions of like noise. And when I live in a place like Ojai or the Hudson Valley, it's like, there's this space for the spiritual dimension, for the kind of dream state to be communicating all the time. And I'm like, the horses must feel an equivalent of that when they're in a big open space amidst a really large landscape and vista where they're living as close as they can really to being what they would be in the wild. And that's such a gift to be able to give that to the horses. So one day is the answer. Not today, but one day.
Yeah.
And I love
Yeah.
to consult. Like there are people that I've been working with in Colorado and Montana who have property or who are looking for property, either from like a homesteading lens or a hospitality lens. And they want to create something with plants and animals and people that's of this energy, but in their unique expression. And what I want to call attention to, like for you and for me, and what, like, it's not just us and the horses, the land is the third like component in how this all gets created. The weather and for example, but also like the physical space, and like being where we are now, where I was before was in the forest. So like you were really held. It felt very fairy tale because it would be sunny outside and you would go on a walk with the horses in the woods and you would be contained and there's moss everywhere and running water. And then here there's this incredible mountain range. So every constellation you have the topas, just like kind of holding space for the work and coming into the field, and communicating. So the land and the animals on the land that are not the horses are just as important, and kind of like the third piece of what makes the whole setting work, and paying attention to that and what it wants. And that's been really exciting, is to help guide people and offer advice for how their expression of their space wants to be.
That's great. And that's good to note.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should add that on your website.
Yeah, I guess so. That comes through the mentorships. Like
All right.
it's a spiral path. And sometimes people come in with a really big mission or vision and then realize there's a deep level of heart healing that needs to happen first. And that could be 3 months or it could be a year. Or the opposite, people come in to work on something really, really big emotionally or relationally, and they're like, whoa, that got cleared up in a month. I have all this space to create something new. And that's something that I didn't foresee until like doing this work over and over. And the unexpected was that people want to come back. They come back once a quarter, or they come back once a year. They want to be in the energy with the horses. They want to thank the land, which is so beautiful. Like people wanting to just come back and rep for others. Or when they come back, it's like once those really key layers of the interpersonal and intrapersonal dimension clear or open, there's all this energy to create. So there's this kind of not two-sided, there's a spectrum, and like from health comes creative expression, and that's people starting businesses or new lives, and they're creating their life as art in a new way, or creative projects. Like being in California now, I have a lot more people in the entertainment industry and storytellers that are working on their books or their screenplays and bringing that into the constellation. So that's been really exciting, is to see that you come back around to this work when you know it's right. And then like what comes out of the expression is rooted in truth and love, because that's the whole point of the constellations, is tuning to truth and opening to love. So that's been really exciting to just be part of that.
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds great. It sounds like you're really flourishing on the West Coast. Like it feels like, it really suits you, because I remember back in New York, it was freezing in the winter. You couldn't work during those months. It was hell trying to feed the horses and muck out. You were slipping on ice and stuff like that. And then it was, spring and then summer, and you kind of get going with your business, and then it starts to get cold again. But where you are now, you can pretty much work all year round, right?
Pretty much. It gets hot. I close down in August usually, but we're still figuring it out. It is really nice. They get to live outside all the time. And for the 2 larger horses that we spoke about, living in a stall is not ideal for them. Having like free range movement is ideal. It's really dry. So the setback is they don't have grass 8 months a year. That's the one thing where I'm like, I try to make amends with them. Like, I'm so sorry I took away your happy place of grazing. But the other benefit is like, it never gets cold to the point that they even need blankets, really, at least where they're at now. So the actual care and keeping of horses is easier. And then there's something about the field of consciousness in California, and the fact that like we're facing, like being near the ocean is a whole other factor. And that this has been the epicenter of kind of the East-West movement and the psychedelic revolution, and the like kind of humanistic psychology all comes from California and the West Coast. There's the historically where we're at in Ojai is like the kind of pioneer spirit, like go mine for gold and oil. But additionally, Ojai has always been a place for healing. And the Chumash people were here before. This is Chumash land. And there a lot of like amends to be made on that dimension of things, on the colonizers side, but also during the Civil War, I believe, when tuberculosis was really common, they would bring people out here to experience the air, clean air. There are hot springs, the kind of geological and geographic components of this valley bring people for healing. So it's nice to be in a place that has that intention and energy seeded into the land and the culture.
Yeah, there's a lot of spiritual teachers as well in Ojai, isn't there? A lot of healers in Ojai.
Yeah, and a lot of amazing women I keep meeting that are like coming out with their teaching or their creativity or their healing, and it feels good after being isolated in the woods to kind of have a little bit more. For other people, they come to Ojai because it's small and quiet. For me, it was like coming out a bit. And yeah, it's plugging into a very different like relationship to land. And I live outside. I'm outside every day, all day, pretty much. And that's different. And it also feels good to be a sort of edge person, like an edge woman, like you. Like we're not in a big city, but we're near them and we're available for those that are like in the grind and in the hustle and in the matrix to come out and unplug and then plug into the vibration of the horses and this kind of space. It's like, we're here to come catch you when you need. You'll know if it's right for you, if you feel it.
I mean, I guess by now, like anyone who's listening gets like what it takes, you know, it's not sort of an immediate process where you just get the horses and they come together and you start doing therapy and all that. Like it's relational, and it's about finding your way with them, getting to know them getting to know you. Like they're the team that, well, I see it like that. Like they're not just my team, but they're my family.
Yeah.
My team, and I live with them and I see them and I hear them and I feed them myself. I do everything myself, but that's just the way it is. And I'm not complaining, but it also like roots me here, like where it's difficult for me to get out. But anyway, I'm not going to complain about that. I mean, you know, this whole lockdown thing and COVID and all that, same thing, same for me, you know, nothing really changed for me. I mean, but yeah, so where was I going with this?
What it takes.
Yeah, what it takes. Yeah, what it takes is it's a process, and it might take a few years, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a journey, and in that journey we grow. Like you grew, you changed. I mean, you really got into your authority. Like you really did come into your power and claimed your power back, and were brave to, you know, carve a way for yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And same with me. Like it takes courage. It really does. It takes courage and risks, you know, and so
a commitment.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, when I first moved out here, it was like, I think it's healthy to constantly reevaluate your relationship to your business, to your partner, to your animals. Like, what are we doing here? What are our agreements? And I had this moment of like, kind of on my knees of like, if this is not supposed to be a business and I am committed to the horses no matter what, like, that's okay. I'm not going to put pressure on them to like support me and support this. If I need to figure out a different way, I will. Like their health and their just life is in my hands, and I'm not going to abandon them or let go of them. Like I'll figure it out and I'll do what it takes. And it's different than like teaching in a different way, because you are connected to land and animals, and the grounding that comes from that is massive. Like, I'm not just holding space. There's like 7,000 pounds and 20 legs, feet on the ground that are holding space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's quite amazing. I mean, it's it definitely forms character, you know, as far as integrity. And you know, I used to work for an equine therapy place, and there were certain things in that place that I just felt were really out of integrity, and that was a push for me to start my own business so that I could do things my way, and I could do all the crazy things that I want to do. If I want to do constellations with horses, I want to do it. If I want to do music with horses, or drama, or dance with horses, which I do, right? I've been doing that for years. And that's also, it's kind of like contact improv, where it's all spontaneous, you know, that nothing's choreographed. It's all spontaneous, and that's what horses really bring out in us: the fun and the play and the creativity. And
absolutely. I think, sorry, my
go
computer
ahead.
just did a thing. That's what makes this so different. Is it's not like you learn a protocol and a set of skills, and after 200 hours you get a piece of paper and then you're ready to go do it. Like, that's the value of mentorship and apprenticeship and time. Is like, you've always encouraged me to use my voice and use my interests and my skill sets, and have the horses amplify that expression, like cacao ceremonies under the moonlight. And like it's not so structured that it kills creativity. It's just enough structure to encourage that growth, and then to be held by someone who's been through it, who knows, and who can troubleshoot when things get sticky or hard. And to just also like stay in the practice. Like, when things personally or professionally were hitting rough spots, I could come to you and we would do the constellation work. And it was like the very thing, like I was getting the medicine in order to serve the medicine, like kept coming. Even when the move, we did one about staying, moving, or going somewhere else. And it was just so clear. And the clarity was so relaxing and created that courage to make a change. That's like, that's been there at every turn, the process and the support and mentorship.
Yeah, thank you. And opinions aside, that's what constellations offer, right? Like, it's not about my opinion, whether I thought it's like, oh, he shouldn't leave, or, you know, it's going so well and whatever, you know. It's like, no, what does the constellation say? What information comes through there? And really honor that. And it really resonates when you tap into that. You're like, yeah, of course, it's a no-brainer. We're supposed to go to California. I mean, and it's all worked out for you, which is really wonderful. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah. And I remember seeing Goliath laying down under an oak tree in the vision of the constellation. And the feeling of relaxation and nourishment was so present. And I was like, oh, this is that. And then I didn't like catch up to that until we end up this ranch. And of course, like, there's a gigantic oak tree in the middle of their area. And I'm like, we found it. We had the little seed. And then a year later, there it had grown into a reality.
Yeah, it's like an anchor, right? The constellation creates an anchor, and then there it is. Yeah, it's really awesome. Well, look, we already talked an hour, and but do you want to talk for a few more minutes? Do you want to address that question? There was a question, right?
Oh yeah. I love you to answer it. And then this was something that came through someone on Instagram that had a question and like, it's something we've talked about in practice, but what are some approaches that allow horse choice in the work, and how not to use them to take on the energy for others?
Okay, so it's how not to use them to take the energy on for others, I'm assuming like negative energy. Do you think that's what that means?
Yeah,
or
I think it
anything?
means like um giving the question is, how do you give horses choice in the work, in the process, and not to use them, and that's in quotes. So I think it's like not approaching the horse's role in an extractive way, so that they're being like forced to rep.
Okay.
Or I'm assuming this is through the constellation lens, which
Okay.
when you're repping, you're not taking on the energy of others. But this
No.
could also
Yeah.
just be therapeutically in general, so that they're not burdened by processing people's stuff, is one of the ways I read that.
Right. Right. So addressing the first part of that question about like offering them choice, I mean, that's my primary thing. Like the horses get to choose. They choose if they participate or if they don't want to participate. And how do you do that? You just leave them alone.
Mhm.
You know, it's so
Yeah.
simple, you know. And when I do the work, I go into their space, but the space is pretty big, you know, so they have plenty of areas that they can hang out, and they don't have to be in the vicinity of where I am, you know, or working. And um, I, I do a thing where I don't go up to the horses. We don't go and work right where they're standing. Like we
Yeah.
go somewhere else, and so then they can choose to come over if they want. And I always say, you know, I sort of say to people, you know, I just want to let you know that it's possible the horses might interact, they might not, you know,
Hmm.
but even if it seems like they're not interacting, they are, because you'll hear the or the you know, or they all start pissing at the same time, or
Hmm.
rolling or
Or an
pooing.
eye or ear. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And from afar, you know, and which means they're totally tuned in.
Mhm.
They're just it's just doesn't feel appropriate for them to be nudging us, you know, and
Yeah.
sometimes they will nudge and push a
Hmm.
little, but it's
Yeah.
very gentle.
Yeah.
And it's not the point, you know. And it's sort of like, you know, when I was at that ranch before, I used to I hated the idea of like my horses being dancing bears, you know, like
Hmm.
not going to have my horses being dancing bears so that they can fulfill a need in someone that's
Yeah.
based in a emptiness inside, which really is for them to fill that space, you know. It's
Hmm.
not the horse's job to fill that space,
Yeah.
right? Silver taught me that one. He was really good at that. And but yeah, so I think, you know, and also only using horses who are capable, who even like people. I mean, some horses don't like people,
Hmm.
and they have a reason why, you know. And why would you use a horse that doesn't really like people, right? Or trust people, or is heavily traumatized? That's why you need like a couple of years, you know, for horses to decompress, to heal from any previous wounding that would involve, probably involves people.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, horses will adapt, but you have to give them time. You know, you have
Yeah.
to give them time. So that's really important, that you just working with horses that want to be there. You know, that, and that's kind of obvious. Like if the horse is not coming to you as the handler or the owner, if the horse doesn't come to you, then you need to work on that first,
Hmm.
right? Before you bring in other people. Like if the
Yeah.
horse is running away from you when you go over there, that's a big red flag. That's a
Hmm.
big red flag. And that happens in the beginning. You know, it happened with my horses, Corazon, Mehi, you
Hmm.
know, they didn't want anything to do with me in the beginning. And it just took time. And I gave them time. And like you, it's like, if you don't want to do this, if you know, then it's fine. I'm still committed to you. You're not going anywhere, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that aspect of also having your space so that it is big enough that they can get away from you
Hmm.
if they want to, if they don't want to
Yeah.
be there. And then so I think that dealt with the first part of the question. And then the second one about taking on people's stuff, like I think you answered that just then, you know, like
Mm.
when we're repping in constellations. So we should say something about horse constellations, because I don't
Yeah.
think we
Yeah.
even So essentially, a horse constellation is a family constellation session in with horses, or it can also be organizational constellation work. But this is work from Bert Hellinger. I want to give him credit. He was German. He passed about 3 years ago, and he brought this work, family constellation, to everybody. And I feel so honored to be able to do the work that he brought forward. And people took it in different ways. Nature constellations, essentially doing it outdoors in nature, or working around nature subjects. And so it was a kind of no-brainer to do it with horses. I already had horses, and there's people that do it with horses also in other countries and stuff. Yeah, so thank you to Bert Hellinger. And then family. So what we're doing is we're looking at the family as a system, and that everybody belongs in the family. And it's possible that there are missing people in the family that's creating an imbalance. So essentially what we're doing is we're bringing them in, and that could be as representatives, right? So a representative could be a person, could be a rock or a stick or something. And sometimes, you know, people do choose the horse as a representative. But what I do, I don't work like that, because I don't want to impose on the horse, you are going to be this person, you know, or you're going to be that. What I do though, is if they come over and it's so obvious who they're representing, then I'll just say, well, this is obviously your mom, or this is your dad, you know, but they're offering themselves. So that's how I allow them also to participate. And you work like that too, don't you? You work like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think there's like a huge expectation on them again, you know, and I'm really sensitive around the dancing bear thing, like, you know, so I don't want people putting pressure on them to expect things from the horses.
Yeah.
The mere fact that we're outside, that we're not in an enclosed space, and that we have a view, that in itself is gold, you know.
Yeah.
And we have privacy, and it's quiet. You know, I don't have traffic noise. I mean, the one thing is the jets go over, but that's not all the time, you know. It's like a couple of seconds. That's the only kind of intrusive sound that comes in. So I'm very fortunate, but that's what I look for. I look for, like you said, you know, privacy, safety. What was the other thing you said?
Freedom.
Freedom, exactly. Yeah, freedom to do your work, you know, when you want to work, right? That's important. And not to have people breathing down your neck, telling you whatever.
Yeah. And time. That's another piece. It's like Sarah and I both, when we work one-on-one, it's like half a day, it's 3 hours. And when we have a group, it's a full day. This isn't like, okay, you're going to rent a round pen for 45 minutes and like pull out some tricks and then give them some treats and move on. The emotional body and the physical body need time to open. And then the horses have time to kind of choose. We always start outside of their area, usually with meditation of some kind. So we're dropping in and kind of like cleaning up our energy before we even enter their space. So there's this idea of like reverence of like, okay, we're going to someone else's space. We're going to be present, and we're going to be paying attention and letting go of expectations. It's like, if you want to like just come and have a petting zoo, this isn't the space. Like they're doing something different. And I stopped doing sessions in the round pen, which is typical for equine therapy. It's like, I realize when they're in the round pen, even if it's a 60-foot round pen and it's just one horse, there's still like an expectation that they need to do something or be something. And I stopped that. I took that out of the mix, because that was a way of, even though they're at liberty, they didn't have, which is another thing that goes against the grain, because you're taught in traditional equine therapy not to work where they live, to like take them somewhere else. But then what I found is that was creating pressure. And yeah, same with yeah, the setup is great when you have you can move spaces as well. Like you can play. And I just wanted one quick thing is like about the horses taking on energy. When I first did, like the first year, I think I had the horses for about 6 months. Sarah came and we led a 2-day retreat together with a group of 10 people. And there was a moment where I think the 3 horses like went to the gate, or we could just, Sarah could feel, and I could feel that they were done. And we probably had 2 left or 1 left of the day. And it was like, when they need space, when they've checked out, it's like same with facilitating as a person for people, like expanding your range and capacity to hold takes time. And we just went out into the woods and we did a nature constellation. The horses were in the background, but it's like, if we were like, well, we promised horse constellations, we got to stay in there. Like, that's not fair to the horses. It's not what is true. And the constellations are about following what is true. And it was amazing because in the middle of the constellation, it started raining, like this dewy rain, which was so perfect for the one that we were doing at the time. So that willingness to improvise or follow the track of truth away from what you expected, there's less control, but there's more power in the unknown.
Yeah, I remember that. That was amazing. And I just want to add this too, that both of us don't ride them. You don't ride your horse. I don't ride mine either.
No.
And it doesn't matter, it doesn't, I didn't get them so that I could ride them, I got them so that I could do this work and if they wanted. But I'm not saying that riding is bad or anything like that, but there are horses that kind of like to ride and there's horses that don't. And it's kind of like riding a horse that doesn't want to be ridden. You can tell if you've got any kind of sense, you can tell this horse doesn't want you on its back. And it could be doing this or whatever, or it could run home or whatever, like I can walk up the back here and just have my horse off the halter and it will come at me like a dog, because it wants to, like run home. Like, if there was something that happened, like maybe a car came along or something, which never happens, but it might decide, oh, I'm just going to go home. But it's very relaxed and very at ease. And that's my whole focus, is like finding an ease, like so I don't have to halt him all the time. I can open the gate and the horse comes out and it's fine and it's got his ball there, and then I come back and it lets me know when he wants to go back in. Lets me know when he wants to come out. That reminds me, you didn't give me my food yet, or my bucket. Like I go, oh yeah, that's right. And I can hear him from here, like, oh yeah, they just letting me know that it's I should have given the supplement in the bucket, and because they know it's all kind of routine and stuff like that, like, but listening and having a sense of connection, I mean, hello, right? But hey, it's been really good chatting with you, and I could talk for hours with you.
I know, me too.
And we didn't even get into some other things that I wanted to get into, but maybe you want to come back. I don't know. Sure. Maybe we could do a part 2. And so if people want to hear more, please say something in the comments, or if you have any questions. And then I'm going to leave your website in the description. I'll leave my website, and then you've got some events coming up. I've got an event on Sunday, a Horse Constellation Day. Have you got any events coming up soon?
My next workshop is in January, but I have open groups on December 4th. We have 1 spot left for a constellation group with the horses, and then I've got space for privates, and then and once we get into 2023, some teacher trainings and workshops about movement and sensuality that come into the work with the horses as well, which I'm very excited about.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's all up on the site.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to definitely leave your website down there. And then you're also on Instagram as Tisse.
Tease,
Yeah,
yeah.
Tisse. I'm on Instagram as Sarah Fancy Constellation. I'm on Facebook as Sarah Fancy. You on Facebook? You're Matisse Williams on Facebook, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I don't use it so much.
yeah.
Yeah, but if there are questions that people have, I would love to go further into like why horses and this work. That's a question we get a bunch. We can hop on again and
Yeah, I
answer
wanted to
those.
talk about actual sessions and like
Yeah,
the results people were getting. That's what I wanted to
yeah,
talk about. So maybe we can talk about it again
for sure.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds
All right
great.
then.
Thank you
Hey,
so
thanks so much,
much.
Matisse. It's been really great talking to you. And thanks everybody for watching.
Yeah.
And please subscribe. Dun, 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 dun.
Yes.
Yay.